And here's what makes it even more frustrating. Some specific items have gotten dramatically more expensive. Beef prices are up over 15% just from last year. Coffee has surged 19 to 20%. Over the past 5 years, hospital services costs have increased by 275%. College tuition is up 196% since the year 2000. These aren't small increases. These are life-changing price jumps that fundamentally alter how people live and what they can afford. So when economists celebrate that inflation has cooled to 2.7%, what they're really saying is that this year, prices will only go up by another 2.7% on top of the 26 to 30% increase we've already absorbed. It's adding insult to injury. You've already been hit with massive price increases, and now you're being told to be grateful that you're only getting hit with a smaller increase this year. It's no wonder people are angry and confused. Now, let's talk about why certain things feel especially expensive, because not all price increases are created equal. The items that have seen the biggest jumps tend to be the things you absolutely cannot avoid buying. Food, housing, healthcare, energy. These are not luxury purchases. You can't just decide not to eat or not to heat your home or skip medical care. So when these essential items get more expensive, it hits you harder than if the price of, say, a new TV went up. Take beef as an example. Right now, the United States has one of the smallest cattle herds in about 70 years. A severe drought in 2022, combined with rising grain prices, meant ranchers couldn't afford to feed their cattle, so they had to sell them off. It takes years to rebuild a herd because you need to keep female cows for breeding, which means taking them out of production. Meanwhile, America's love for beef hasn't diminished at all. Strong demand plus limited supply equals record high prices. And this isn't going to get better anytime soon. Experts predict beef prices will continue climbing throughout 2026. Or look at eggs. For most of 2025, egg prices were through the roof because of outbreaks of highly pathogenic avian influenza, also known as bird flu. Millions of chickens had to be culled, which destroyed egg production capacity. The price of a dozen eggs in some places hit $9. Think about that. $9 for eggs. Now, egg prices have come down recently as production recovered. They're down about 30% from their peak, but they're still significantly higher than they were before the pandemic. And here's the kicker. Avian flu is carried by migratory birds, so it keeps coming back. Experts warn it's only a matter of time before another outbreak pushes prices up again. You're constantly bracing for the next price shock. Housing and rent tell a similar story. Shelter costs rose 0.4% just in December 2025, and that was the largest single factor in the overall monthly inflation increase. Over the past several years, housing has become dramatically less affordable. Mortgage rates went up, home prices went up, rents went up, and even though inflation is supposedly cooling, you're still paying way more for your housing than you were a few years ago. And that extra money you're spending on rent or your mortgage, that's money you can't spend on anything else. Then there's healthcare, which is its own special nightmare. Hospital services have increased at a rate far above overall inflation for decades. As of mid-2024, hospital costs were rising at nearly 7% annually. That's more than double the overall inflation rate. Prescription drug prices, nursing home costs, all of it keeps climbing faster than wages. And here's the thing about healthcare. You often don't have a choice. You can't shop around when you're having a heart attack. You can't negotiate when your kid needs emergency surgery. You pay what they charge, and they keep charging more. And let's not forget insurance. Car insurance and home insurance premiums have been hit with aggressive rate hikes in recent years. In some disaster-prone areas, particularly parts of California and Gulf Coast states, home insurance premiums are rising by more than 20% this year alone. In some places, insurers are just leaving entirely, which means homeowners are stuck with whatever overpriced options remain, or they go uninsured, which is a terrifying risk. Auto insurance is spiking in states like California, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, and Washington, D.C. These are mandatory expenses. You legally have to have car insurance. You need homeowners insurance to get a mortgage. So when these prices go up, you just have to absorb the cost. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is something almost nobody talks about. Even though inflation has cooled, the prices you're paying now are locked in at this new higher level. Prices almost never go back down to where they were before. This is called the base effect, and it's why people feel so frustrated. Imagine you're earning $50,000 a year and your grocery bill was $5,000 annually. Then inflation spikes, and your grocery bill jumps to $6,500, a 30% increase. Now inflation cools, and your grocery bill only goes up another 2.7% this year to about $6,675. Sure, it's not increasing as fast, but you're still paying way more than you were before. And unless your salary increased by 30% too, which it almost certainly didn't, you're objectively worse off. You have less purchasing power. You're poorer in real terms, and that's the disconnect. Economists look at slowing inflation and see success. Regular people look at their bank accounts and see that they can afford less than they could 5 years ago, despite working just as hard or even harder. Both perspectives are valid, but only one of them determines whether you can pay your bills. Let's talk about wages, because this is the other half of the affordability equation. For inflation to not hurt you, your income needs to keep pace with rising prices. For a lot of Americans, that simply hasn't happened. Wage growth has been relatively stable at around 3.9% year over year as of mid-2025. That sounds decent until you remember that grocery prices alone are up 26 to 30% over 5 years. Even if your wage increased by 4% every year for 5 years, that's only about a 22% cumulative increase, and that's before taxes. Meanwhile, your essential costs went up 30% or more. The math doesn't work. You're falling behind. And for people on fixed incomes, retirees living on Social Security, people with disabilities, this is an absolute crisis. Their income doesn't go up with inflation, or it goes up very slowly based on government calculations that often lag behind real-world price increases. So they're just getting crushed. A senior citizen who was comfortably managing their expenses 5 years ago might now be choosing between groceries and medication. That's not hyperbole. That's the reality for millions of Americans. Now you might be thinking, okay, but why are prices still going up at all? Didn't the Federal Reserve raise interest rates to fight inflation? Didn't that work? Well, yes and no. The Fed did raise rates aggressively, taking them from near zero to over 5%. And that did help cool inflation from its 9% peak down to the current 2.7%. But here's what a lot of people don't realize. The Fed's goal is not zero inflation. Their target is 2% inflation. That means they want prices to keep going up forever, just at a slow and steady pace. In the Fed's view, a little bit of inflation is healthy for the economy. It encourages spending and investment rather than hoarding cash. But from a consumer's perspective, that means your purchasing power is designed to erode over time. Every year, even in a good economy with controlled inflation, the money in your savings account buys a little bit less. Over decades, the cumulative effect is enormous. What cost $1 in 1970 now costs over $7. That's just how the system is designed to work. And there are other factors keeping prices elevated even as inflation cools. Tariffs, for one. The Trump administration imposed tariffs on imported goods, including steel, aluminum, and various food products. Those tariffs get passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Even when tariffs are partially rolled back, prices don't necessarily come down. Companies rarely voluntarily lower prices once consumers have accepted a higher price point. Then there's corporate profit-taking. During periods of high inflation, some companies used inflation as cover to raise prices more than their costs actually increased, padding their profit margins. When inflation cools, those higher profit margins often stay in place. Labor shortages are another factor. Immigration crackdowns have tightened labor supply, especially in industries like agriculture, meatpacking, and hospitality. When there aren't enough workers, companies have to pay higher wages to attract employees, and those higher labor costs get passed on to consumers. Climate change is driving up food prices through more frequent droughts, lewds and extreme weather that damage crops and livestock. And none of these factors are going away. If anything, they're getting worse. So what does all of this mean for you going forward? Unfortunately, the outlook is not great. Most economists predict that food prices will continue to rise in 2026. The USDA estimates overall food prices will increase another 3% this year. Beef prices are expected to keep climbing. Coffee, chocolate, sugar, all likely to get more expensive. Canned goods could jump as much as 15% due to tariffs on tin-coated steel used in cans. Dairy products might increase because of higher feed costs for dairy cows. The only bright spot is that egg prices might come down if avian flu outbreaks don't recur, but that's a big if. Housing costs are expected to remain elevated. Insurance premiums will keep rising in many areas. Healthcare costs will continue their relentless climb. And even if overall inflation stays around 2 to 3%, remember, that's still an increase on top of all the increases you've already absorbed. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Now, I don't want to leave you feeling hopeless, because there are things you can do to protect yourself and stretch your dollars further. First, get serious about budgeting. Track every dollar, know where your money is going, use apps or spreadsheets to monitor your spending. When you can see exactly how much you're spending on groceries, eating out, subscriptions, and discretionary purchases, you can make informed decisions about where to cut back. Second, meal planning is your friend. Eating at home is dramatically cheaper than takeout or restaurants. Plan your meals for the week, make a detailed shopping list, and stick to it. This reduces impulse purchases and food waste. Look for sales and buy in bulk when prices are good on non-perishables. Use store brands instead of name brands. The quality is often identical, but the price is significantly lower. Third, shop around and compare prices. Different stores have different pricing strategies. Maybe produce is cheaper at one store, while meat is cheaper at another. It might feel like a hassle to visit multiple stores. But if it saves you $30 or $40 a week, that's over $2,000 a year. That's real money. Use apps that compare prices or show you where items are on sale. Fourth, consider substitutions. If beef is too expensive, eat more chicken or plant-based proteins. If coffee is killing your budget, cut back or switch to a less expensive brand. Look for recipes that use cheaper ingredients. Learn to cook dried beans instead of buying canned. Make your own bread. These small changes add up. Fifth, take advantage of assistance programs if you qualify. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, provides food benefits to low-income individuals and families. Many seniors and people with disabilities don't realize they're eligible. Check your eligibility. There's no shame in getting help when you need it. Sixth, be strategic about big purchases. If you need a car, furniture, or appliances, wait for sales. Shop used when possible. Negotiate. Don't accept the first price. And don't finance purchases at high interest rates if you can avoid it. Debt is expensive, especially in a high interest rate environment. Seventh, focus on increasing your income if possible. Ask for a raise. Look for a higher paying job. Develop skills that make you more valuable. Take on a side hustle. I know this is easier said than done, but even a small increase in income can make a meaningful difference when prices are high. And finally, vote and make your voice heard. Inflation, wages, housing costs, healthcare costs, these are all influenced by government policies. Elected officials respond to pressure from constituents. If affordability is your top concern, let your representatives know. Support policies that address the root causes of price increases, whether that's increasing housing supply, reforming healthcare, addressing climate change, or regulating corporate pricing practices. Here's the bottom line, and this is what I want you to remember. When you feel like everything is more expensive, even though the news says inflation is falling, trust your experience. You're not imagining it. Prices are significantly higher than they were a few years ago, and slow inflation doesn't change that fundamental reality. The number that matters is not the inflation rate. It's the actual price you pay and whether your income kept pace. For most people, it didn't. You're dealing with the accumulated burden of years of price increases that happened faster than wage increases. The economic data that policymakers celebrate and the lived experience of regular people are two different things. Both can be true simultaneously. Inflation can be cooling while people struggle more than ever to afford basic necessities. And until prices actually come down, which they almost never do, or until wages catch up, which could take years, people are going to continue feeling financially squeezed. This is the new normal, at least for now. Prices are higher, your money doesn't go as far, and you have to be smarter, more strategic, and more careful with every dollar. It's not fair. It's not what anyone wanted. But it's the reality we're dealing with. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to keep spending the same way and hoping things get better? Or are you going to adapt, budget, plan, and fight for every bit of financial breathing room you can get? Because in this economy, being passive is a recipe for falling further behind. Stay informed, stay smart, and don't let anyone gaslight you into thinking your financial struggles aren't real. They are, and you're not alone.